Absolutely. So right, with temperatures soaring across the UK over the last couple of weeks, this has had a bad effect for millions of hay fever sufferers.
Yeah, so as the pollen count continues to rise, allergy expert Professor Adam Fox is here now to keep your symptoms under control. We've got loads of calls, so let's get straight to Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Holly, Philip and Adam.
Hiya. Right, how can we help?
Well, I was just wondering, this year my hay fever's worse than ever, and I was just wondered, is it safe to take a double dose of antihistamines on the really bad days?
So usually, yes. I mean, I'd always say that it's worth having a chat with your pharmacist or your GP if you've got any other medical conditions or you're on any other medications, just to make sure that there isn't a particular reason why. But for most people, it's absolutely harmless to do that. The doses on the side of the packet are the over-the-counter doses, so they tend to be on the conservative side. So for most people, it's absolutely fine to do that. And pollen counts vary, so from day to day, you're going to get worse symptoms. Antihistamines get into your system really quick, so just taking twice the dose is a good way of managing it a little bit better.
And does it get worse over the years, your hay fever, if hers is worse than last year, or is this just because maybe there's more pollen in the air?
So usually when you first get it, it might get worse for the first few years, but often it will just be the same. But you can get really good years. But of course, it's not just you, it's the pollen count. So it's really hard to predict.
All right, I hope that helps, Michelle. Thank you. We've got Katie on the line now. Hi, Katie.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Basically, what I wanted to know, I never had an issue with hay fever until I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago. I noticed that once it got to kind of springtime, I was starting to get quite a sore throat and lots of coughing and sneezing. So I'm 41 now, and I was wondering, is it normal to develop hay fever, later in life? And also, what other treatments are there apart from antihistamines? Because they tend to make me quite drowsy.
OK.
So hay fever is really common. It affects 25% of adults. And people start at different times. So probably the most common time to start getting it is late teenage years, early adulthood, but it's perfectly reasonable to get it for the first time when you're 40. Your symptoms sound pretty typical. And the real giveaway will be the fact that it happens at the same time every year and that you get a bit of a response when you take antihistamines. The only way you're going to know for certain is to get an allergy test. But for most people, it's usually pretty clear that's what the problem is. If you're finding the antihistamines make you drowsy, it might be that they're the wrong ones. So just check this with your pharmacist. But make sure you take the long-acting, non-sleepy ones. Often people take things like Piriton or chlorphenamine. They will make you drowsy. Go for things like cetirizine or loratadine and ask about nasal sprays. Think about pollen barriers, so a bit of Vaseline or Haymax that you can just rub on your nose. All of those things will help.
OK,
thank
all right. Hope
you.
that helped, Katie. Emma is on the phone now. Hi, Emma.
Hiya.
Hi, right,
Morning.
OK, so nothing seems to help with you.
No, I've been suffering for about 20 years now. I've tried everything you could possibly buy over the counter. The doctor last year prescribed me some tablets. They sort of worked for a couple of months and now they don't help much anymore. I'm just wondering, if there's anything else stronger that I could have.
So for most people, hay fever is a bit irritating, but for about 20–25% of people, it's a really big deal, and it really impacts on quality of life. It affects how you sleep, it affects work, school, etc. And just changing to different antihistamines doesn't make much sense because you're going to get broadly the same effect, and that includes the prescription ones. They're not particularly better than the ones you get over the counter. You need to have a chat with your GP about getting a nasal spray. Some of those, so for example, ones with just salt water in, they're very safe. You can get them over the counter. For adults, you can get steroid nasal sprays over the counter as well, but there are better ones you can get from your GP, so have a chat with them.
Have you tried nasal sprays before?
I've tried the over-the-counter ones. I've literally tried everything.
Maybe you're worth going back then and asking your doctor for something.
Worth having a chat. And also, if you've sort of got to the end of the road, you've tried all the right medicines, and despite that, it's still having a real impact, then it's worth having a chat to them about getting a referral to be considered for what we call desensitization. So this is a treatment to make you less allergic, so you're less reliant on the medicines in the first place. It involves quite a long course of treatment. It's usually on the NHS only available through specialist clinics, but it's there and it's really effective, so definitely worth thinking about.
All right. Thanks, Emma.
Well, because Rachel's got an issue here. She has her hay fever really badly but can't take any medication for it because she's on medication for other conditions. So is there anything that you could suggest that isn't a tablet or a nasal spray?
So the typical antihistamines and nasal sprays really don't interact with many medicines. So I think if you've been told it's a problem with what other medicines you're on, just double check that with the pharmacist, because they may not have been quite right first time around. But the salt water nasal sprays, which are very, very safe, they don't interact with anything at all. There's no reason you wouldn't be able to take that. And likewise, the steroid nasal sprays, there's very, very few reasons why you wouldn't be able to take those. But if that really is a problem, then again, the desensitization, all the treatment of desensitization involves is very high doses, either injected or squirted under your tongue, of pollen, so they don't really interact with anything at all. So again, very, very safe and a good idea to ask for specialist referral if you're not getting anywhere.
OK, Hannah says, I've had constant sniffles for as long as I can remember. At one point before COVID, I even had a continuous cough for about 2 years. I'm constantly sniffing or sneezing. This time of year, I put it down to hay fever, but I'm still the same during the winter. I'm worried it's got something more serious, as I also suffer from eczema. Please help. I've had enough of the sniffles.
Yeah, that sounds like very hard work. If you've got a history of eczema, much bigger chance that you may have allergies as well. But of course, you can't blame pollen and hay fever if you're getting symptoms in November and December. It must be something else as well. Now, if you've had hay fever, you could also start developing allergies to things like house dust mites or your pets, for example. I think you need to get an allergy test. You need the reassurance of knowing what it is that the problem is, so that you can then get the right treatment. And if needs be, it may be that you need some help reducing your exposure to house dust mite or the pets that you've got at home.
There's a lot of people who have hay fever who say that some of the symptoms are very similar to COVID. So can you just, in a nutshell, split those for us?
It's been a real challenge over the last year or two, because hay fever is so common, and even if you're sure that it's not COVID, everybody around you is thinking it's COVID, and that's not a good look. I think the big giveaways will be a temperature and a cough. So neither of those are typical symptoms of hay fever. Most people with hay fever know they've got it, so they're sort of expecting it. They know what it feels like, and it's typically blocked up nose, sneezing, itchy nose, none of which are typical symptoms of COVID. Of course, if you're not sure, always sensible to get a COVID test. But I think for most people, actually, the symptoms are different enough. If you're getting a temperature, that's not hay fever. So despite the name, actually, fever has nothing to do with allergies at all. If you're getting a fever, think of something else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
You're